Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, we're there. All righty. Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Baird. I'm an event facilitator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Aninilawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the homeland of the Red River Métis. Additionally, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied in the Métis community of Roostertown. And of course, we are gathered here today to celebrate a very special issue of Prairie Fire magazine, Manitoba Kitchen Party. Let's give a round of applause for everybody. And of course, thank everybody at Prairie Fire for their support, partnership, and for publishing these beautiful works. So I do have the pleasure of introducing tonight's host for everybody, Kristian Enright. Kristian Enright is a, oh yeah, let's give a round of applause. Yeah, let's go for it. Kristian Enright is a Treaty 1 based writer whose forthcoming book, Postmodern Weather Report, will be released with Turnstone Press. He's also at work on several other literary projects, including a collection of short stories called The Book of Conversations, as well as an ecological project called Eco Network. Please join me in welcoming Kristian Enright.
So much, everyone. Delight to see you all here this evening. I'd like to do something slightly non-literary, which is just to ask for a huge outburst of literary energy. A civilized yawp, if you will. Just please. Thank you. Sorry, that was a little non-literary. I apologize for the initial remarks. So that was a very civilized yawp. I'd like to welcome to this lovely prairie gathering the improbable visitation of sky and the intimacy despite it. And we have a wonderful list of writers for you. I'd like to just do some quick thanks to the Lowen Foundation, the Winnipeg Arts Council, Manitoba Arts Council, and the Canadian Council for the Arts. Of course, we have some wonderful talent here this evening. I hope you all like the epic and stream of consciousness forms, because this evening is going to be quite unique. We actually have 20 readers tonight. So what that means is we're actually going to have to forego the pithy, even the pithy introduction for you. We're actually just going to call your name and beg you to please read in about 3 minutes if you can. So we'll all kind of be channeling Oscar Wilde this evening. So that's one thing we just request of you. Now, of course, we will have some remarks at the end that we'll come back for. We do have one person who's not here, so we will alter the reading a little bit. Basically, the concluding remarks will, of course, be appropriately at the end. So what I'm going to do now is, and we'll get started, because again, I can feel the non-geological time pressing in on us. I'd like to first start off by welcoming Bob Armstrong, please.
It's okay. Okay, I'll just read the opening bit of my piece, which is called, "Is It Too Late to Become a Wunderkind?" Once I realized that you had to be either American or Russian to go into space, I set aside my ambition of walking on some other extraterrestrial body. I had been hoping for Mars. In my first high school career planning exercise, I told the guidance counselor I wanted to be a forest ranger. I didn't know what that job entailed, but walking through forests sounded better than most of the other options available. J.H. Brunn's Collegiate had a kind of experimental work-at-your-own-pace philosophy when I was a student. So over the next few years, I spent a lot of free periods in the library, reading Time and Newsweek articles about guerrilla wars in Africa and Asia. As a result, when I was asked again about my future, I said I wanted to be a reporter. I suppose I pictured myself in a khaki vest, Nikon dangling from around my neck, living a life of romantic, sweat-stained, world-weary adventure. By this time, I'd read a couple of Ernest Hemingway novels, and I discovered that he'd started out briefly as a reporter for the Toronto Star. A period as a reporter, I reasoned, must be a kind of chrysalis stage for a novelist. And that was the career I really wanted, but that I didn't believe could actually be a career. With that in mind, after graduation, I entered the 2-year creative communications journalism program at Red River Community College. I was attracted to the local college by the brevity of the program, which would get me out into the world when I was barely 20 years old. The university alternative would require loans to study at Carleton University. I was too impatient for that, not to mention too afraid of debt. At Red River, I learned how to pack all the W's in the first paragraph of a news story and to avoid attributions other than said, and landed two two-week internships at the Winnipeg Free Press. In my first work term at age 19, I somehow ended up spending a day in court covering a horrific domestic homicide on Roseau River First Nation. I suspect cub reporters are eased into the business more gently these days. The program culminated in the second year with what was then known as the Major Writing Project. My project had two components: a study of the major figures in the new journalism movement of the 1960s and 70s, Tom Wolfe, Hunter S. Thompson, Joan Didion, Michael Hare, and my own attempt at new journalism, which involved drinking with members of the Rhinoceros Party and attending liberal and conservative rallies while high during the 1980 federal election. My pastiche of Thompson's Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail was sophomoric, but in my defense, I was literally a sophomore. By graduation day, I no longer wanted merely to become a globe-trotting foreign correspondent turned novelist. I wanted to become an enfant terrible globe-trotting foreign correspondent turned novelist. Thank you very much.
I would like to call up Jody Baltessen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. This poem was written in the fall after a pretty challenging fire season for Manitoba. It is a bit of an homage to the black bear. Ursa Major crossing ER 309. ER 309 is an access road to the Whiteshell Lake in the north part of the Whiteshell. When you see a bear in the ditch at the side of the road, or on the road itself, as you round a curve, breaking into her wilding eye, imagine her boreal, snaking through ferns and strewn debris, remnants of drift and gouge, of base melt and the slow slide of glacial ice. Track her scat, flattened anthills, scratched trees, flipped logs, her trail of heat. Observe her haunches, the fur there a tangle of burrs, a dispersal ritual played out season after season. Each burr a map of spring, stalk and stem. She carries the future into the deepening wood. Acorns, ants, birds' eggs, blueberries, carrion, clover, cranberries, fish. Absent of want, she looks to den, to slip into a constellation of cells replacing, her breath folding dormant, her womb opening to embrace a waiting star. Thank you.
Folks, now we're asking for Sheldon and Birnie to come up, please.
Hello folks, I'm Sheldon and this is from The Deer Problem. After we'd come in from getting high, my wife and Buddy's wife joined the bulk of the crowd in watching a slideshow of old photographs projected on a big screen. Cherished memories, glory days, touching tributes to those of us who died in the intervening years. The montage was very meaningful, I'm sure, if you knew any of the people featured. Of course, neither Alan nor I did, not really. Instead, we found ourselves in the washroom on the same piss schedule. Al leaned over while we were draining our bladders. Hey bud, he goes, want some mushrooms? Hell yeah, I go, but I didn't, not really. I was just bored and drunk enough to think so. Lately, I found myself doing crap like that all the time, going with the flow instead of stating my actual position or feelings on a subject. At home, at work, the golf course, at a fucking high school reunion I had no business being at in the first place. It was starting to become a problem. Still, after washing up, Al pulls some caps and stems out of the pearl snap pocket of his western shirt and lays them in my palm. I chunk them down, wash them back with a gulp of Pilsner. Al grins. You got a deep freeze at home, bud? Sure, I shrug. Picked up a nice little unit from Costco a couple years back. Okay, he goes, follow me. Now, I knew things were gonna get weird, but even so, I was taken aback when Al brought me over to his mother-in-law's Subaru and popped the trunk open. Brand new recurve boat, bud, Al goes. Good as brand new anyways. Never been used apart from a target shooting. Found it on Kijiji, bargain basement price. Had to snap it up while we was out here. Stupid not to. You ever shoot one of these? Sure, I told Al, but only in the basement range of a sporting goods store way out on Portage Avenue. I'd also shot compound bows, all but once in practice, the exception being from the back of a flat-bottom aluminum boat on a flooded-out Missouri River, hunting silver Asian carp while on a serious bud heavy bender. But I didn't tell Al any of that because Al just kept on talking. This here's the solution to your deer problem, buddy, Al says, hoisting the thing out of the Subaru. We got everything we need right here. We could take one out, clean them up, stuff them in your freezer before anyone at this fucking party even knows we're gone. You'll be eating like a king for the rest of the year, dude. What? I stuttered, standing there staring into the trunk. Sure, I'd had a couple of drinks in those joints and maybe the shrooms were kicking in. I knew Al hunted, or claimed he did anyway, out on the eastern slopes of the Rockies. He brought it up over the years, but I hadn't really taken him seriously. Albertans are chronic bullshitters. The stars have aligned, bud, he says. Let's fucking go. Thanks.
Please welcome Katherine.
Is that good? I'm reading off a printed sheet because I couldn't find my issue and I thought I'd hidden it on myself. So I printed it out and then it came in the mail this morning. So, this poem is called Setting the Plinth. And I think there's one person in this audience who will know what I'm talking about. But I think it's a kind of a way of talking about setting yourself in the land. We could have sung it up, raised it with a cane from a flatbed truck. We could have dragged it over roller beams, an army of men pulling ropes, but it wouldn't have sat right. And the ropes would have chafed the stone. The bumpy ride shattered its thin edges. The stone's soul may have jangled, loosened from the riding on the rough road across unworked land. And fumes from the diesel engine might have rattled the stone's heart, poisoned its coat with residue. And it is dark and pure, the stone, clean as the wild air around it, as the oceans used to be. We had to set it down just so. So we opened a door and drummed it through, due north somewhere. We won't tell. Set it reaching upward, earth to sky, pointing to the clouds, the sun, pointing to the curve of the ether, what they call it now, the Carmen line, that canopy, that ball of glass or crystal, edge of the atmosphere. How perfect it is, the plinth, in that wild place, that north, that nowhere.
We'll switch a room here for you folks. In place of Di Brandt, Lindsay Charles.
Di was unable to make it this evening. She was not feeling well, so I am reading her poem on her behalf and wish her a speedy recovery. The Magic Chickadees' Song. That was the day the bison broke through their limestone casings, leaped off the great stone plinths that held them bound for 150 years above the steps of the government house of that era, and wove their way through the crowds gathered to plant orange flags and crimson handprints on the side of the black cube out front, now bereft of its stone queen and her crown and scepter, her head rolling in the murky brown waters of the mighty river flowing behind the big house. The people were there to commemorate the loss of their stolen dead children, who would have become their living elders and grandmothers. They were there to cry together, to sing, to pray, to pledge the restoration of their interrupted inheritance, to rise up together to reclaim their ancestral lands and ways of living. The bison thundered their way west along the streets, dodging the screech and blare of cars and buses, kicking up dust and grass along the boulevards, and waking up their own lost, stolen bison children, turning restlessly underground. By the time they reached the white horse, standing guard over the entrance to the open fields of the West, lone sentinel of all tragically separated prairie lovers, the bison were no longer two, but hundreds, ballooning quickly into hundreds of thousands, the mighty seething brown herds of the past restored to their full bison glory. They were trampling the canola and wheat fields in their path. They were snorting huge gulps of prairie air and breathing out flames of fire and ire. The settlers, who benefited so greatly from the gift of land bestowed upon them for agriculture and industrial development at the First Peoples' expense, stood in crowds along the highway, mouths agape. Some cheered to see the land reverted so quickly right before their eyes back to original freestanding prairie, even though it would cost them their present way of life. Some whipped out their cell phones to call the police. Some got into their big trucks and combines and took chase, hoping to run down the herds in their hyped up spiked tanks on rubber wheels. This is where my vision of the liberated bison leaping off their stone plinths at the government house and calling back their lost bison herds and former glory as the people mourn the memory of their lost and stolen human children and the future hopes they carried ends, or rather pauses. Maybe they can join the rewilding of the bison now happening in First Nations territories all over Turtle Island, including Broken Head, just north of the city, where the Stone Queen's head reemerged last year from the turbulent Red River, fished up in a net and morphed back into the wrinkled, brown-skinned Laughing Kokum, sitting on a pink granite rock overlooking muskeg and spruce, smoking a red willow cigarette. All around us, we see and feel the stirrings of recuperation, regeneration, restoration of a more beautiful, more just, more open-hearted, humble, generous, sharing way of being on this earth, of living in this land. The hope, the lyrical lilt of it stirs in the maple trees' leaves and wafts through the blue prairie air on the magic chickadees' song. May it bring us along. Thank you.
And first on, we'd like to call up Julian Crawford, please.
Thank you. This is my first published piece. Dedicated to my dad. It's called Grandpa's Aftershave. I love the smell of railroad ties. Don't ask me why. Maybe the memory flows through my veins like the lines my grandfather and his father before him rode. I never met my granddad. He died in 1971 when my dad was still a boy. I can't recall the scent of his aftershave or how it mingled with cigarette smoke, but I know that dank, earthy aroma of creosote. The top notes, medicinal, the heart, damp earth and wood, petrichor. The base notes, coal smoke and grease. They feel like thick wool sweaters, old books, pipe tobacco. My granddad once got caught on the back of a steam engine in the middle of a Manitoba winter, climbing icy rungs, checking brakes and couplers, fixing what he could with his hands. Suddenly, it lurches forward, clunking and vibrating. She's moving, but she's not clear. His shouts lost to the screeching of freezing steel, billowing white steam mixing with smoke, wind whipping, rendering him invisible. He retreats into his CPR-issued coat like a turtle in its shell, collar pulled up to cover his ears. One hand anchors the ladder, the other clutches the coat tight around his face. Leather gloves gripping icy rungs, hobnail boots digging into the platform, gritting his teeth against the cold. I wonder what he thought about. Was he scared? Or was there an element of thrill? How did he occupy his mind as he held on for dear life? I can see the blur of snow and soot below. I can feel the chill in his bones. And I ponder this every time that heady aroma of history and innovation, fortitude and engine oil, steadfastness and steam, lights up my olfactory like a switch lamp, signaling to my DNA familiarity I only know by blood. And I think of that steely-handed conductor, and I smile. I always smile.
Me, I will be reading now. This is Wolseley Winter as a backdrop with trees. It would be difficult to cast them, especially at the end of autumn, but the trees are still characters as they arc down the enchanted streets in their calloused nudity and or shimmering dress. In a romantic play, they produce a tumult of leaves and later celebrate the reflected pagan marriage of old wooden homes with the snow some wish was tepid confetti. A lambent spirit walks up the path of flawed sidewalks, touching the windows with no disturbance to their inner life. Later, frost will do the same thing with consequence. In the tree's crevices, the arches of the cathedral are pagan and not. The liminal summer light comes down to our stairs, but not as fallout angels. The honeymoon of spring sun is tantamount to another planet, perhaps only linguistically. Yet a pure film is imagined on winter's working canvas for the wedding. The snow's synesthesia is that it loses its white neutrality with a touch and becomes transparent. As tasteless as a silent movie in our times. Touch is the implied sense dynamic of romantic movies, while the eye is winked at by existence. The blushes we feel with show, beauty done with blood. 2. The inner moth of desire climbs the heavy air to the bulb in the propaganda of spring. The above descriptions are against the following depictions when some ideas are lost. A chilly abstraction of the snow, an extreme of garish paleness, of liminal dying, preserve the body while challenging the soul for warmth. Or its color, an endless negation in blistering light, or more redemptively, in endless deferral, as if the moon were not a masterpiece of dust, but a sculpture of a fantastic snowball that explains life. Thank you. Okay, folks, I'd like to welcome Godfrey, please. Welcome.
This is an excerpt from The Midnight Florists, a novel. The idea came to Tannaby when she was projecting the garden at her local microplex cinema, which squatted in a dimly lit nook in England. After bouncing around the country, unsettled and restless, Tannaby had happened upon this underground art centre and within it discovered one of her spiritual homes. It had provided her with several epiphanies. There was the time she realised she was an artist as she served a flaming glass of illegal absinthe to a punter during a raucous concert. Then there was the night she spent kissing the most handsome man in the microplex in a discreet stairwell and realised that perhaps men were on the cards too. And now, during Derek Jarman's strange pastoral film, she knew she had to visit Grandma Rose in Canada. Admittedly, this epiphany had a specific action tied to it, but she knew an epiphany when it struck, and she also knew that ignoring it was a fool's errand. It would simply morph into a painful crick in her neck that would take weeks of massage to ease, and was so costly she'd quickly learn to just accept the epiphany and realign her life to it. And so, while the celluloid wove its way through the ancient projector, making a noise like a cicada song, Tannaby began composing a letter to Grandma Rose, who was in fact her great aunt, on the back of a flyer advertising this film. Grandma Rose was particular about how people communicated with her. Phone calls must be scheduled, otherwise she assumed notification of a disaster at the first ring. Emails also had to be sent by appointment. She didn't take text messages seriously, regarding them as a game she had to be in the right mood to play. Letters could be sent without prior arrangement, although there was a hierarchy for their opening. Typed envelopes were saved for Mondays. Business begins the week. Although if a typewriter had been used, it might be reassigned to the handwritten pile, and these were opened on the morning of receipt with a dagger she'd pickpocketed from an unpleasant archduke in Cairo. The typed envelopes were opened with a palette knife given to her by an esteemed oil painter. One must bring artistry where it is lacking. Envelopes with a plastic window were opened contemptuously with a used butter knife. Tanabe's letter received the dagger. After receiving it, Grandma Rose laid it upon the embossed brass plate she used for mail she would return to, but a moment later she moved it to rest on the arm of her red velvet sofa. Grandma Lucille flicked her eyes from her crossword to the letter, and then back to Rose. "It's Tanabe," Rose replied. "The niece or the dog?" "Niece. She would like to visit." Lucille returned to her crossword, while Rose gazed towards a large photograph of roses that hung above the mantelpiece. "Something's rooting," she murmured. "Something?" Rose nodded. "Seed or bulb?" "Seed. Bulb, both. Neither. We shall see." "Yes. Yes, no doubt we shall." Seed or bulb. Between Rose and Lucille and some of the folks they associated with, this phrase was shorthand for a number of things, depending on the context. It could mean new or established, friend or family, free or fixed. Sometimes, within very discreet circles, it indicated membership and standing within an organisation few folks had heard of, and those who had assumed it was one of the many myths this city murmured about itself. It didn't occur to anyone that any of those involved were still alive, which was quite handy.
So comments, please.
Good evening. So this is a story that takes place backwards. And I guess the reason I wrote a story that goes backwards was that I wanted to really zone in on how the choices that we make every day impact something. So what you say yes to, what you say no to, what does that cause to happen later on? January 19th, 2023, 2:32 a.m. The cop sitting on the curb lifts his head. He looks as shook as I feel. "I swear I saw a weapon," he says. "One of them had a weapon. I thought he was stabbing that kid over there." My ears ache with the noise of the sirens. A different cop grabs me and slams me against the hood of the cruiser. The plastic package falls to my pocket. He picks it up. "Oh," he says. "Oh, look what we have here." He puts his face close to mine, and I almost puke from his nasty coffee breath. "What else you got?" He feels in my pockets, pulls out the two smaller dime baggies of the 320s, and holds them up for everyone to see. Their phones catch it all. "Drugs and cash," he announces. 2 cell phones. "So you're dealing, are you?" He turns me around, and the knife in my waistband comes loose and clinks against the pavement. "Shit, I forgot about that." "He did have a weapon," says the cop as he picks it up. His voice sways with relief. This knife has solved his problem. I hold out my wrists. They welcome the cold clench of the handcuffs. My body has inherited the knowledge of when to surrender. January 19th, 2023, 2:29 a.m. Mark has the same choice as me, to keep fighting for the package or to help Sean, who is choking on the sidewalk on his knees. Before I can decide, something hot cracks past me, and Mark falls to the ground. Red petals blossom onto the gray snow from the back of Mark's head. People scream and run. Some hold up their phones and yell, "Fucking pigs, you shot him!" I look down at what is left of Mark, at Sean, whose lips are blue, at the cop who flops down on the curb, his head in his hands, his gun clattering to his feet at the sight of Sean, still alive, and Mark, dead. January 19th, 2023, 2:28 a.m. We push through the doorway into a night so cold it burns my skin, but I barely notice because my lungs can't take in enough air and my chest feels tight and hard. Mark is still trying to grab the package from me, and I hold it close to my stomach as I jab, punch, and kick him. Sean attempts to squeeze between us. He tries to say something that sounds like, "Chill out," but he's coughing too much to talk properly. "Fight!" someone shouts. Sean breaks away from us and goes down. His body shakes with coughs as he presses his hands to his chest. January 19th, 2023, 2:23 a.m. Shit, tear gas, shit! People jump up and run to the door. Sean starts hacking so hard, tears pour from his eyes, and I remember his asthma. "Let's go," I say, and push him through the crowd. A slow white cloud steams up from the floor. My throat and eyes feel scratchy and dry. It falls from someone's pocket right in front of me, a package of white dust compressed into cellophane. I bend down and snatch it up. Mark's hand snaps shut over my wrist. I can't hear what he's saying, and his face is blurred by the mist, but I think I see his mouth moving, saying, "Hand it over." I've come too far to give up. This package is mine. I need it more than him. I pull my arm away. "Sorry, not sorry, bro," I say.
Welcome. Kirstian Lezubski, did I say that right? Please say it correctly when you get here. Thank you.
Hi, it's Kirsten Lezubski, but it's a weird one. My mom was full of drugs when she named me, which is, I think, why she couldn't spell my name correctly. I'm gonna blame her. So this poem is called Flood Season, and it was written for a colleague of mine who I really respected, who went through a big change around the spring, summertime. So this is maybe not the way it should end, but the way it nonetheless does. In the forking, muddy river flowing backwards, bringing truth home westwards over stony ground and golden plains. The wheat will still dance. Canola will spread fair fingers through the earth to taste all the life that slumbered 6 still months in snow. Once in a century, these prairie skies stretch open their endless arms to flood it all, scrape clean the landscape, glint the sun's light back to it from high waters, and, in doing so, prove that we lasted another landlocked decade. Resilient, we bloom from wet clay and dark tangled weeds shelved on shallow banks, river's tears and its swaying hair. We glut our wintered weight on the life left behind, dig our roots deep through loam and clay, through all those Tyndallstone bones to say, we remain. Take our strength, wash us away, and still our seeds sprout sure. Life rises from what's left squalid and bright as cracked glass and concrete, a drowned city skyline, gilded in field light. Thank you.
Probably an awkward human segue. I'm just letting you all know that we're about halfway through, so we're doing great, everybody. Well done. Okay, great. Okay, I'd like to call up Benjamin Paulic, please.
I'm trying to find the page here. I'm very prepared, as you can see. Thank you. This is a poem called Fortune Telling, which I've worked on with a few of my mentors who are actually in the room with us today. Here we go. All poets eventually become dreamers, self-made prophets who, when pen meets paper, put their teeth to the heavens and style from that starlit expanse a new truth. This divinity smells like smoldering, plus a smokestack originating in the brainstem, plus the charred hands afterwards. Poets invent time travel and clever new sentences and always fear what one will do to the other. Prophecy, rather rawness of self, a dewy-eyed miracle, is discovered pitted in the chest, rather the starry night sky between your ribs. Learning art the hard way is understanding that stars burn out too, and learning humanity is realizing that if there's any difference to be found between us and the stars, it's the chance at reignition. Thank you very much.
One call up Marjorie Moore, please.
And thank you to Prairie Fire for bringing me this beautiful issue. All these wonderful Manitoba poets. Not poets, writers. They're not all poets. Mine is a poem. It's a haibun, which is a Japanese form that combines prose poems and haiku. And I think traditionally it was used as a travel poem, but I use it to travel back in time to my childhood. And it's called Overgrowth. On our farm, there was no lawn. There was crabgrass and reed grass and brome grass and wild rye thistle, and I don't know what else, clover, dandelions. Granny would braid the tall ones into golden crowns for us little girls. My favorite was bigweed. Even with its coarse knotted stems, it was kinder than the prickly foxtails that looked so pretty and soft, waving in the breeze, but that stung and caught between feet and flip-flops. Deep green carpet knots protect bare soles from cracked earth. Tangles trap our toes. Stinging nettle, we called it itchweed, flourished where the stairs to the old house used to be. Sturdy stalks taller than our heads, and leaves bigger than our hands, guarding the place, saving us from the rotting floors of the porch. While the ponies could crop the crabgrass and digweed short and presentable, it took a small herd of goats and their love of foliage to conquer the patch of overgrown menace. Nettles blister fingers, but to voracious, tough goats, luxury of leaves.
David Alexander Robertson.
Yeah, thank you. It's an excerpt from a short story called The Grandfather Clock. Grandfather clock started to look complete. The man added the hour, the minute hands. He hammered in an access panel atop the clock because the old one had gone missing. He made the new panel out of a thicker material. He added the pendulum and the weights, then wound the clock by pulling on each of the 3 chains, raising the weights as high as they could go. He adjusted the pendulum several times, sitting back and watching it swing on each occasion while sipping coffee. The man said. Everything okay? Gillian said. The man set the coffee down, adjusted the pendulum again, then sat and watched it swing. Curious, Gillian stood and walked over to where he could see the pendulum. It was swinging to and fro, stopping a centimeter before hitting either side of the case. It was precise. When your grandfather mush him. Right. When you mush and put the clock together, well, the man took off his hat and wiped out his brow. He put his hat back on and breathed out calmly. I guess that wasn't his doing. I mean, the case of the clock is narrow, so the pendulum has to be adjusted perfectly or it'll stop swinging, swing too fast, or swing too slow. You mean built the clock, Gillian said. You see, if it swings heavy, it'll hit the sides, the man said. If it swings light, it'll go for a bit, but eventually stop. Both ways, it'll eventually die. What do you mean, put the clock together? The man bent over, slipped his hand between the weights without touching them as though he were playing a game of operation, and delicately turned a small knob at the bottom of the pendulum. He positioned it a hair's width away from the wooden side, then let it go. It swung, and it kept swinging, and the man straightened. He watched the clock for 5 minutes, glancing at the clock's face and his watch repeatedly until he appeared satisfied. Then he closed the door, slapped his hands together like they'd gathered dust from his work, and took a last sip of coffee. You find that it's running fast or slow, you just have to turn that knob like I did until you find the sweet spot, the man said. That'll get it moving again. Gideon walked the man over to the front door and paused while the man kept going. The repairman then walked around the front of the car to the driver's side, opened the door, and finally stopped there. "Keep an eye on it," the man said. "Yep," Gillian said. "Say, what do you mean about putting it together anyway? He built that thing, you know." "That's what you meant, isn't it?" "It's a kit," the old man said. "Tough one, though. Harder than putting together something from IKEA, anyway." "A kit," Gillian said, but by then, the man had gotten in the car, he closed the door, and backed up towards the main road. Gillian closed the front door and looked out over the room. From where he was, he could see the entire living room and part of the dining room. He could not see the kitchen or the grandfather clock. He could hear ticking and knew the pendulum was doing its job. It was louder in the silence and emptiness. All he had in the living room was a bookshelf with very few books, more carvings and literature, television on a side table, and a futon still in the form of a bed. The sheets atop the futon were unmade, half of them kicked to the side from when he'd gotten up to answer the door. He'd purchased the futon at IKEA. The instructions looked simple, but assembling it took him a long time. The instructions suggested 2 people. Maybe if Alice had come by, it would have taken half the time. Still, it hadn't been difficult, just tedious. It had required very little skill, only patience. Gideon went to the bookshelf, ignored the books, and picked up one of his mushroom's carvings. He imagined that his mushroom had used some kind of template to make it rather than do it on his own. Then he died. It was all he left behind. He threw the carving across the room and smashed against the wall, breaking into 2 uneven halves. Gideon instantly regretted the act, but couldn't take it back. Nothing that had happened in the past could be undone. The grandfather clock in the dining room began to play a familiar tune that Gideon had not heard for many years. He couldn't exactly remember when, but he knew it by heart. How odd it was that he remembered one thing, but not the other. The music calmed him. It lasted just a few seconds before it began to chime the hours, starting at 1 and ending at 12. It was time for lunch.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming tonight. It's so nice to be here. And thank you so much to Prairie Fire for hosting this kitchen party. To the fawn on the off-ramp at dusk. Empress Street overpass where all summer wildfire evacuees have watched commuters circulate 8 lanes of Portage Avenue. You've been browsing the cemetery nestled between the Assiniboine and Red Lobster by the little church that's outlasted every arson attempt. 4 wrong steps, and now your soft body and my car locked in this concrete chute, halogen eyes flashing, box breathing. Traffic gazers perch on barrier meant to protect, backpacks distending into roadway, and we both hear my friend speaking about the freight of her life. I have no margin. I edge past as you tiptoe to parking lot, lower snout, make a meal of litter and weeds.
Angeline Schellenberg.
Exposure. After Mavi breaks painting, lake calling. The life that once depended on my willingness to carry it, tiny as teacup lichen, has shrunk to fit a dark room inside your mind. Picture this love that stilled your tiniest whimpers under my milk-soaked shawl. How strange, this love now demands I shove you under the icy water of your own fear. You feel the shock of it, and I turn the same love onto myself. I trust that before you sink, you will start to kick.
Welcome, Brenda Sciberras, please.
Hello, everyone. The poem I'm going to read is from a collection, a new collection that's coming out in the fall with That Bay Press, and it's called Riddled with Thread, poems inspired by the life and art of Mary Pratt. Service Station, 1978. I tell you, it's so much more than a moose in a service station. It's not hanging from the rafters, but suspended from a man's truck. Hooves bound in crucifixion, her blood runs cold across concrete. It's so much more than you could imagine. Still hard to look at. Brings forth pain and raw remembrance, this brutal ritual of the hunt. I never wanted to write it down or retrace those candid details. Yet now, I too speak years after, utter the trauma that haunts my thoughts, remains etched in my memory. Time does not heal this. The surrender of the animal, its unwillingness to partake, the silent scream and heart stopping, that gutted carcass sprawled like a trophy on display, sacrificed to appease an appetite, gratify his wild hunger. Thank you.
Now please welcome James Scoles. Is James here? There he is, there he is, welcome him, there he is. Come on, come on.
Thanks, everyone. Apologize for wearing a mask. I got caught shoplifting at the mall here years ago, and I'm always kind of afraid that they're going to recognize me, that my picture is going to show up, and it's not the only mall either. Unicity, I got caught shoplifting at too. This isn't the only province I've gotten caught shoplifting. So this is a short story, and it's about a local cartoonist, but it kind of pays homage to people who write and people who have a dream, who want to create. And so this is a local cartoonist, and he has a cat that fetches, and they're famous, okay? And they're known as, his cartoonists, Frumpy and Tremor. And Frumpy and Tremor are best friends as well, okay? And everyone, when the movies start coming to town sorry about my glasses are fogging up, I'm getting excited. When the movies start coming to town, his mother, his brother, his sister, and especially Jody, she's the Avon lady next door, convince him he has to get his cat into the movies, okay? So they get him into the movies, but Jody, now I need you to help me. I'm only gonna read 2 lines from my story because we've been here all night, right? My legs are, I can barely stand. You're gonna help me, you're gonna read one of the lines, okay? Now Judy is an Avon lady and she lives next door. Now we all know that Avon ladies smoke cigarettes. De Maurier Reds for the most part. When you may know that I was, you may not know this, I was an Avon man in the north, and so I can share that knowledge, right? So they smoke. So remember, they have a bit of a gravelly voice. I'm gonna read, now this story starts out in dialogue, which is kind of unusual. If you do it well, it's rare, right? But it starts out in scene. And so the story, the main character, Martin, who has this cat, he starts out and he says, Winnipeg, because they're talking about why are all these movies coming to Winnipeg, right? You remember in the 2000s, early 2000s, all these movies were coming to Winnipeg? I got to be an extra, and I realized what's so cool about being an extra is you can sit there and work on your writing while everyone else tries to be in the movie. Okay, so anyways, that's where the inspiration came from, okay? And so when you start a story out in dialogue, okay, you're in scene, you're going to work with me. So Martin is saying to someone, the reason why all these movies are coming to Winnipeg is because Winnipeg looks like Chicago on film. But Judy, she's smoking her cigarette and she's sitting there and she goes, bullshit. It's cheap labor, okay? So all I need you to say is that line. Bullshit, okay? That's all I need you to say, so please do that. Now remember, he's talking to Judy. He doesn't lose his cat, but you see, this is a story about a cat. The famous movie star in the movie, Martin kind of feels like she's falling in love with him. And so they start to get close, and then Martin's like, this is a moment where we're almost going to, and then she's like, I want your cat. So yeah, so this is a Hollywood movie star story about stealing a cat from a Winnipeg cartoonist. So when you say bullshit, I want you to really feel that this is Hollywood just making a statement, okay? And again, this is the end of the reading. I'm gonna read one line, and you're gonna go bullshit, and we're done here. Well, we still have a few more readings, right, Kristian? Okay. All right. It's called Frumpy and Tremor. Oh, and thank you very much to Janine, Lindsay, Caroline, Kristian, and also a big shout out to Andrews Taskins, the former editor of Prairie Fire, who published more words of mine than any editor in Canada, probably ever will as well. Okay, thank you, Andrews, and also to my mother as well. They say it's because Winnipeg looks, oh, by the way, let me just practice for okay, so
we're running out of time.
yeah, so when I point and you say, when I say, you say bullshit, right? Bullshit. Louder. Bullshit. Okay. They say it's because Winnipeg looks like Chicago on film. Bullshit. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Well, that all leaves for me for the evening, and I guess I'm going to tell you to pay for your book before you leave it. Thank you. So I'd like to call Jordyn Sheldon, please.
Okay, this is my first poem published, and I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank, thanks team. I'd like to thank all the poets for rescuing me from the clutches of academia. This is a much better place to be. Okay, an elegy for Portage Place. You wander down Edmonton or stroll through the sky, await a bus on Portage beneath two arrows pointed north. Enter through a gust of air, a comforting astigmatism, a bootleg Jets tea gathered around a teen burger and a coffee. Frozen clock stands above an empty rainforest floor. What remains are the phantoms of the paradise. Wishes that come cheap as a copper penny, a unicorn's grace, $1 million, coins swallowed into her aquamarine belly, a lover's return, a way back home. I used to imagine them swimming through the concourse under the city, flowing down the Red River into Lake Winnipeg. And rather than gather at the top like algae or sink to the bottom to lake bed tombs, their fish food for the pickerel, their fish food for the pike, feeding a not so distant cousin that we've always had in common.
Folks, we're coming to the home stretch here. Sabrina Spenser Smith.
My poem is called Moving. Shiloh Drive, Nanaimo. In our first home, we could both fit inside the bathtub. There was more than enough space in our bedroom for a desk. The ocean was a future we could drive to. 5 minutes on the road and the world became endless. Early love, talk of forever, you taught me how to cook rice. Menzies Ridge Drive, Nanaimo. This home lives like a map in my memory. To find you, I follow the trail of wedding boxes into the living room. There you are, sleeping off your pain on the recliner. And there, in the backyard, tending flowers. Everywhere I go, I see you. I see you with my eyes closed shut. East 6th Avenue, Vancouver. Each day, hundreds of crows flew over our bachelor suite like omens. A smoker next door, COVID-19, loneliness in a city we couldn't afford. I didn't want to move here, I croaked again and again. Did you know a crow can hold a grudge its whole life? Renfrew Street, Vancouver. Forget about the landlord. Forget about the rats. Once we drank bubble tea under a storm of cherry blossom petals. Sherburne Street, Winnipeg. 5 weeks ago, you moved out from our dream home. I still slip into saying we and ours about the garden, sunroom. We owned a house. It was ours for a moment. In this province of sprawling skies, we carry on our search for space. I want you to know you can always shelter in the room within my ribcage. Thank you.
So our final reader for the evening, Trinh.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be reading parts from my creative nonfiction piece, The Fall, which is about my mom and her change in health when she fractured her pelvis a few years ago, and also my exploration of Buddhism. And since writing the piece, my mom has passed away. Breathing in, I observe the impermanent nature of all dharmas. Tuesday, April 18th. Ma was going home. It had been snowy and cold when Ma left her home last December. Now, on her return, shy blades of grass were emerging. Canada geese circled the pond again, ready to nest and raise their goslings. I rode in the patient transport van with her, squeezing her hand. Her perm had grown out, the skin on her face, usually dewy and glowing, was dry and dull. I felt panic in my body, like when I took my newborns home from the hospital. I asked then, as I asked in the vehicle now, how can I take care of a human being? My sister and I would be responsible for her care 24/7. She could never be left alone. We had set up home care too. The equipment had all been delivered: hospital bed, wheelchair, commode, sit-to-stand lift. The pole and transition bar had been installed in the smaller room that would be Mom's bedroom. It was all ready to go. But was I? Could I handle another change? Ma barely looked around those first few days. It didn't seem like she recognized her graduation pictures in the living room or her beloved aloe vera plants by the window. At night, she still tried to get out of bed. She said she wanted to go home. I realized she wasn't escaping to a place. She didn't want to go home like it was a physical location where she slept and ate and relaxed. Home wasn't a space. Home was a time period. Ma wanted to go back home to the time when her legs still supported her, when she felt her feet solid on the ground. Home was a feeling, the feeling when she was herself. I had been going through my daily life as if Ma was permanent, that her health would be the same, that her body and her mind would be suspended in time. I expected my kids to grow up, to change and develop. They learn to walk and talk and use the toilet, learn to read and write and play sports. So why did I expect things not to change with my mom? Or wish that things could be different, could go back to what they were? When all around me, things were changing all the time. Breathing out, I observe the impermanent nature of all darkness.
Well done, everyone. We have reached the summit together. A huge round of applause for all the readers here and everybody for coming out, of course. To Ian McCausland, who actually did the photo for the cover. I'd like to thank Daniel, who is, I think it's very handsome looking Stephen Deadlifts, I always think. Can you see it? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's wonderful, it's been a great addition to the store. So just a couple of notes, I think he'll come in and do a few final remarks as well. Two things, one is that we're gonna get everybody who read to come up here and give evidence that writers do not only exist in isolation. So we'll get a nice big photo for the whole event. And of course, the other lovely thing is that if you'd like to approach any of the authors, we have pens over there and you can sign copies and transcend mere transactions and capitalism, and books seem to escape that almost. And I'd like to thank also our board, Lindsay and Carolyn and Janine, and just everybody for being part of this lovely event. And we hope to see you back again, and thank you. I think Daniel has a couple of little remarks as well, so thank you so much. That's it. Okay, thank you everyone for coming.